From the dawn of man, one thought has persistently occupied our minds. Funny monkey. And what better way to celebrate our primate brothers than through cinema? From gigantic gorillas to atrocious ape suits and cool chimps, many different species have been represented on the big screen. I love primates, a lot of people do, and that's why I've compiled a list of primate movies that I will be going through in this video. The quality of these films is all over the place, but I hope this random approach adds to the entertainment value. This list isn't going in any particular order, I am not going from best to worst or vice versa. Some of these are silly kids movies, and others are violent horror movies. I'm just reaching my hand into a bag of bananas trying to find one that isn't rotten. Before I start this thing, I just want to give a shout out to this comment that kickstarted this whole thing. Oh, and one more thing, I might accidentally call a chimp a monkey, and just know that I don't do it on purpose. I know my primates. This is a gorilla, this is a chimpanzee, this is a monkey, and this is a guy in a gorilla suit. And another thing, out of respect for people who might be put off by it, and because I want to be consistent, some of the older movies in this video have some pretty groan-worthy depictions of cultures, but it's important to realize that they were a product of their time. I will also address some controversial things specific to certain movies on a case-by-case basis. Without further ado, let's start this list with the great-granddaddy of all primate movies.
Look at Kong, the eighth wonder of the world.
Carl Denham, an eccentric filmmaker, plans to travel to a mysterious island and shoot a movie about an ancient god named Kong, hoping to get actual footage of the creature. The ship is leaving on short notice, so he ropes in a girl named Anne to play the leading lady at the last minute. When they arrive, the natives take a fancy to Anne and she's offered as a sacrifice to Kong, who is very real. Denham's crew then sets out on a journey to rescue her, encountering the island's terrifying inhabitants along the way. Kong is eventually captured and taken to New York City for display on Broadway, where he breaks free of his restraints, goes on a rampage, and carries Anne to the top of the Empire State Building. It's a classic movie. Even if you only have a passing interest in monster movies, you've likely heard of this one. It's simple, but in terms of structure, that's easily this film's strongest feature. It's a straightforward action-adventure movie. It moves along at a very brisk pace. One would expect from a modern movie even, there's always something happening. The special effects may look primitive by today's standards, but considering the standard for visual effects at the time, the only film to really match this one in terms of production value off the top of my head was Metropolis, with its amazing miniatures. But considering that, this movie was such a massive leap forward for creature effects. The sheer variety of monsters on screen was something I don't think was attempted before, outside of The Lost World, which also had work done by this film's special effect artist Willis O'Brien. The blending of live action and stop motion footage is damn impressive. Still, considering the coordination that was required, the bits where the stop motion Kong interacts with the live action elements are executed as well as they could have been for a film of its time. It can look herky-jerky during the more intense action sequences, but stop motion animation was still technically in its infancy, and Willis O'Brien would improve dramatically over time. Considering most movies looked like this for a while, yeah, I think King Kong looks great. That said, it's hard to deny that many elements of this movie have aged quite poorly, the attitude towards women especially.
I've never been on a ship before.
Well, I've never been on one with a woman before.
Anne is barely a character after she gets kidnapped. She spends the rest of the movie's screen time screaming. This film also popularized the whole "ooh, spooky natives" subgenre. In complete fairness, it somehow handles them a little better than the 2005 remake. Here they're actually speaking in complete sentences, but in the remake they're just scary movie monsters. Kinda funny how that turned out. The way characters speak is also characteristically 30s.
There it is. Skull Mountain, the wall, everything just like on my funny little map.
It's pretty funny. But yeah, the original King Kong is a classic for a reason. The pacing is exhilarating, the whole island sequence and subsequent New York rampage are a lot of fun. Kong is a memorable and even sympathetic monster, and while it has aged poorly in some areas, it's still a blast to go back and watch. And, most importantly, it laid the groundwork for not just monster movies, but for movies about funny little guys. Very fun movie, highly recommended.
It wasn't the airplanes. It was beauty killed the beast.
Going Bananas is a 1987 comedy released by Cannon Films, best known for their low-budget action movies and Superman 4 for some reason. This is actually the first movie on the channel, excluding repackaged crime dramas, that doesn't have explicit horror or science fiction elements. It's still pretty fucking scary though. The movie follows a boy named Benjamin, the son of a senator of the United States, vacationing in the fictional
Welcome to Mamba Zamba Land.
Mamba Zamba Land. Oh boy.
Brush up and down.
Hey!
Not in circles.
And he's accompanied by a prissy attendant named Big Bad Joe, played by famous actor Dom DeLuise. Must have owed someone a favor if he's in this movie. Their guide is Muzambo II, who's a bit eccentric.
Mr. Big Bad Joe, be quiet.
During their safari in Mamba Zamba Land, a mischievous man in a chimpanzee suit hitches a ride with them back to civilization, and aggressively unfunny shenanigans ensue.
Please. Oh, Mr. Mazambo, tell him, please.
No, he didn't do anything.
Tell him not to. You hear me? Take them.
As the circus tries to catch the chimp, who Ben names Bonzo. Bonzo can talk too.
Bonzo loves Ben. Ben loves Bonzo.
Bonzo and Ben seem to have this weird romantic thing going on too. It's pretty creepy. I don't like how it's presented.
You want this banana, Bonzo?
Anyways, when Bonzo is captured, Ben and his gang try to save him. Even more unfunny shenanigans ensue.
My goodness. Kill the boy!
If a movie is bad, it's much less painful if it's a horror movie. At least then, the attempts at being frightening can be laughed at. When a comedy movie is bad, that means its badness comes in the form of jokes that repeatedly miss, which is far more grueling to sit through. Going Bananas is a bad comedy.
Now he's laughing at us.
It's filled with annoying bits that feel like they go on forever, especially for a movie with very little original gags to offer. Just every comedy cliche in the book, including the whole dressing the animal up as a person and everyone conveniently falling for it bit. There's the scene with a waiter where Bonzo keeps stealing the cakes he's putting down and he's all like, how weird. And it just goes on for 3 beats longer than it should. The movie is full of stupid scenes like this. It just keeps bombing. And when it tries to be all schmaltzy and heartfelt, it just doesn't work because the movie has failed at making me care about these characters. The editing and sound design turns the movie into a chaotic nightmare, and every scene is incredibly grating.
This is happening. Give me the key. Yeah.
Please.
Oh, no, she's gonna order. What do you want? Pulley say.
I think we'll go for it like an
It's a cacophony. There's only so many times I can say a movie isn't funny, so I won't spend much longer on this one. I want the sweet release of death. The next movie is also the most recent on this list. 2018's Rampage is a loose adaptation of the video game series of the same name, which itself was a tribute to old monster movies, so, you know, snake eating its own tail. The film stars the funny bald eyebrow-raising man. I mean, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, as a primatologist. And the primate of the film is an albino gorilla named George. Unlike in the games where normal people are turned into monsters, in the movie, an experimental green gas from a shady corporation space station lands in George's enclosure, which makes him more aggressive and causes him to slowly grow in size. While George only gets a growth spurt, because his design is perfect the way it is, the green gas lands in 2 other locations and mutates a crocodile and a wolf, turning them into bona fide kaiju.
Jesus. Weirdos on the internet? Calling him Ralph.
With George on the run and being mind-controlled by the evil corporation along with the other two monsters, well, it's less like mind control and more like emitting a really annoying dog whistle, but it's in effect mind control. The Rock, George's caretaker, sets out to save his primate friend, along with a scientist named Dr. Caldwell, by finding the antidote. This guy, Major Russell, who becomes The Rock and Caldwell's inside man, is a pretty amusing character.
You see, when science shits the bed, I'm the guy they called to change the sheets.
George is a sweet guy. The serum is just causing him to act aggressive. So the film does give me a reason to care about the stakes. His relationship with The Rock is pretty well established, and yeah, it is one of the stronger elements of the film's story. This film can best be described as a live-action Saturday morning cartoon, and no character better encapsulates this than the head of the evil corporation. She's a full-blown cliché, and Maylene Ackerman has a lot of fun in the role.
I told you we should have liquidated her 2 years ago.
Claire, you can't liquidate every problem you have.
Agree to disagree.
The film overall has a functional yet unremarkable script, but it works as a solid throwback to old monster movies, just with the ability to show more action scenes that a modern Hollywood budget would allow.
I'm taking these things out. I have no control.
As you may have noticed, I've been calling The Rock by his stage name, and that's because, with whatever movie he's in, it's really hard to not see him as The Rock. His star power is unfortunately a bit distracting. And that's just a problem with every movie he's in. So when the movie insists he's a primatologist, it's like, yeah, okay. He doesn't have great range. They try to do something with his character as a combat veteran who's become disillusioned and doesn't trust other people, but it's a character archetype that's been done to death. The Rock's character in this movie is written to be as milquetoast and inoffensive as possible. So if Dwayne Johnson wasn't the one in the role, then the character of Davis wouldn't have much to him. By essentially just being The Rock with another name, he does carry over his charisma.
I'm gonna have to knock you out, and then you, look at me, I'm gonna choke you out so bad you're gonna urinate yourself.
That's a big arm. Don't fight it.
The movie does have some surprisingly effective horror moments. They feel a little out of place in this goofy action movie, but they do work. The whole sequence at the beginning on the space station is very effective and bombastic. It starts with the camera moving freeform around the set, revealing new pieces of information that tell a gruesome story about the crew's fate. The scene with the wolf also has a thrilling and well-earned jump scare. With the exception of George just being a white-haired gorilla, the other two monsters are pretty well-designed creatures. The wolf especially has a couple unique abilities that surprise. They're reminiscent of moments from older kaiju movies where a monster is revealed to have a new ability. The climax of the film in Chicago could be about 5 or 10 minutes shorter, but it has some impressive scenes of monster mayhem. The tracking shots following the monsters really pulled me into the action. It's really well done and exciting. The Rock joining the battle is impractical considering he just got shot in the leg, but I can buy it. Seeing him team up with George is endearing.
You mess with my friend, you mess with me, mother!
The script is pretty standard, the score is largely unremarkable, and the characters are flat, but I dig the monster designs, the action is thrilling, the chemistry between George and The Rock is there. In fact, he has more chemistry with this CGI ape than he does the love interest, and I can vibe with the whole Saturday morning cartoon thing it's going for. For a placebo for a MonsterVerse movie in the time before King of the Monsters, I thought it was good fun. Removed from that context, it's still an enjoyable monster movie. It's actually one of the better video game to movie adaptations, and it achieved that by being a perfectly fine monster movie. Good wholesome stuff. Probably not for the whole family, but still a good dumb movie. For our next movie, we're traveling back a handful of decades. Rampage was too exciting. It's time to slow down. Way down.
Are you the sacred monkey?
Enter Kong Island, the first movie I ever felt disappointment for. To fully express this disappointment, I feel like I need to quote the film synopsis provided by Mill Creek. A diabolical team of scientists land on Kong Island, determined to implant devices in the brains of the gorilla population that will transform them into an unstoppable army. Their plan for world domination runs amok when a descendant of King Kong arrives, and the mayhem begins. This is an outright lie. There are scientists who want to create an army of gorilla slaves through mind control, but there is no King Kong descendant. Not even a guy in a gorilla suit blue-screened to step on the actors. Instead, we have one of the most bleakly boring films ever sharded onto a double-sided disc. It's not entirely the filmmaker's fault. Mill Creek just got so bored with their movie that they came up with a blatantly false hook to entice unaware consumers. I remember watching this movie at a very young age, waiting for the, quote, descendant of King Kong to show up and start some mayhem, and no such thing happened. This film doesn't even take place on an island.
So I thought I'd come to Nairobi for the sake of old times and old friends.
The very foundation this film sits on is composed of lies. The mayhem never starts either.
Ah, excellent.
Kong Island is an Italian movie. The original title can be translated to Eva, the Savage Venus. The, quote, descendant of Kong equivalent is actually the titular Eva, who is led to the gorilla enclosure and held captive along with a bunch of other randos. Said randos have some love plot going on or some shit. I have a hard time recapping this because this movie bores me to tears. I can assure you, with very little confidence, that things happen in this movie. Actors recite lines. The scene ends. The movie trudges forth with very little regard for the viewer's engagement. Scenes just keep going and going and going, and the characters keep watching stock footage. The mind-controlled gorillas are accompanied by a guitar sting almost every time, which gets real annoying when there's a whole bunch of them in one scene. There's this scene where this dude corners Ava and, realizing she doesn't speak English, still bombards her with questions like, geez, dude.
Are you the sacred monkey? What's your name? Where'd you find it? Where did you find this? Don't you understand me? Won't you try to tell me where's she gone to?
You know she can't say anything. Did you just need to vent with someone?
The sacred monkeys! The sacred monkeys!
Where?
There in the treetop!
If there's one nice thing I can say, the stock footage looks pretty as it can in this VHS transfer, and the music, characteristic of an Italian movie, is pretty good. Let this video be a PSA. Kong Island is not worth your time, and I'm glad I was able to get it out of the way here instead of having to deal with it later in the upcoming science fiction box set video. This is a contender for one of the most boring movies of all time. The next movie, however, is like a shot of caffeine.
I need your help.
From the producers of Air Bud, Spymate is a crowning cinematic achievement.
I call this one the Cha-Cha Chimpanzee.
An evil scientist kidnaps a little girl who managed to develop a laser, planning to use it to take over the world. Unbeknownst to him, her father is an ex-spy, and he immediately sets out getting his team back together, which includes a chimpanzee named Minky. They set out on a globe-trotting adventure. Many zany action set pieces ensue. This is not highbrow entertainment. I mean, come on, it's from the Air Bud people. But good lord, is this movie entertaining.
Sa, Minky-san, it is time.
Spymate is a collection of spy and kids movie cliches, bridging the set pieces with a very conventional narrative.
You know, your mother would have been so proud of you today.
The mom is dead, of course, and the dad is raising the daughter all by himself, which is something seen in a lot of kids' movies from this time period. Whenever it cuts to a foreign location, it plays stereotypical music. It's rife with stereotypes about the Japanese, too. I don't know, you decide for yourself. The movie moves along at a breakneck pace. There's never a dull moment. Even when Minky isn't on screen, there's some laughably bad moment happening.
Nobody messes with my daughter.
See, it's just crazy to me that an early 2000s kids movie is not grating. That's this movie's greatest achievement. It's never annoying. It's aimed at kids, but it's not purely for kids. I can imagine an adult finding this crazy bullshit entertaining. And I can't really fault a movie for being entertaining, now can I? It succeeded in what it set out to be, a cute little comedy spy movie starring a weird little monkey guy. To be honest, cinema peaked with this movie. It's all been downhill since. It's better than most James Bond movies.
Your country needs you for a top secret mission. What do you say, Minky? Are you in?
Following up a fun kids movie appropriately, our next entry is a violent, bloody horror film.
Shocking audiences everywhere.
Shakma! I first became familiar with this movie through Red Letter Media's Best of the Worst series.
There's even one point where not Mark Hamill tries to knock down a door and the whole set wall shakes.
It's not.
I don't think there are many movies about killer baboons, so if there's one unique element this movie has, it's that. There's probably a reason why there aren't many movies about killer baboons. They're not scary. The movie follows a bunch of horny med students staying the night at a hospital, LARPing a Dungeons & Dragons game. Unfortunately for them, a baboon injected with crazy juice named Shakma is on the loose, ironically becoming an element in the game with real life-or-death consequences. Roddy McDowell, best known for playing Cornelius and Caesar in the Planet of the Apes movies, stars in a supporting role as the Game Master. He spends 90% of his scenes in a room separated from the rest of the actors, so that must have been an easy paycheck. How exactly the computer system he runs knows when a character dies for real that is, I don't know. This would be a great little Animal on the Loose movie if it was 20 minutes shorter. I'm sorry, but having characters wandering around empty hallways for half the runtime doesn't mean automatic tension. When the baboon attacks, it's hilarious. But the movie needed to space out the attack scenes better. 3 characters die less than halfway through, and the rest of the film is spent with the rest of the cast trying to survive Shakma's assaults. And it's very predictable. The whole Dungeons & Dragons setup is admittedly a little clever, but it doesn't do enough with it. Once Shakma starts offing people, the setup is mostly dropped, with the crazy baboon taking priority. A good chunk of this movie is just these 2 dorks running from room to room trying to distract Shakma. Or Shakma bouncing off doors because the production team convinced him a female baboon in heat was on the other side. This is a 70-minute movie that aspires to be a 100-minute one. And it doesn't earn it. There's not enough substance here to justify the runtime, and the resulting movie is a slog. The characters are uninteresting, the main threat isn't very scary, and it's needlessly long. How Shakma is ultimately defeated is clever, I guess, but it's the only real moment in the movie that intrigued me. Whatever. Next movie. I'll be breaking my rules a little here, as this isn't really a movie, but rather an episode from a TV show, because, I don't know, you can't tell me what to do with my list, Dad! It'll also be a nice break from the feature-length stuff. The TV show in question? Ultra Q, the precursor to the Ultraman series. It's an anthology, meaning every episode follows a different story, though, unlike something like The Twilight Zone, it has a recurring cast of characters. Every episode covers a supernatural occurrence, often involving a giant monster, a format that would be translated to Ultraman, where he fights a new monster every week. Not every episode of Ultra Q featured a monster, but I'm getting sidetracked. This show was originally broadcast in black and white, but for the sake of this review, I'll be using the colorization. This is the second episode of the series, Goro and Goro. It's about a mute man named Goro, who is a bit of a monkey maniac. I can relate. Monkeys helped him cope with the death of his parents, so when one of the monkeys in his care turns giant after drinking an experimental potion that stimulates the thyroid gland, he takes care of it. The villagers get angry at Goro for stealing food to feed the growing monkey's appetite, so the show's regulars hatch a plan to send the oversized monkey to a remote island where he can live in peace. Overall, it's a pretty standard episode, but I love Tsuburai's television work, just in general. The tokusatsu sequences where the monkey goes on an accidental rampage, King Kong style, is amusing. There's even a nod to Kong, with the island they plan to send the monkey to having its own race of giants. If the giant monkey looks familiar, that's because they reused the suit from King Kong vs. Godzilla. I like how the conclusion is a reversal of the typical Kong storyline, with the giant ape being brought to an island rather than from one, and it still ends on a bittersweet note. But yeah, fun episode, I recommend it. I recommend all of Ultra Q actually. Mill Creek did a decent Blu-ray release of it recently. You can probably pick it up for cheap. Fun diversion. Let's get back to the feature-length movies. First, there was Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein. Then there was Bela Lugosi meets a Brooklyn gorilla. Pretty big downgrade. And speaking of downgrades, the copy of this movie on Mill Creek's Mad Scientist set is abysmal. It's obviously a VHS rip with warped visuals, but sometimes you can see the burned-in film track. Sometimes the movie even cuts out. So it's a VHS rip of an uncleaned film reel. Groovy. Also, holy shit, this edit.
I'll wait here. Well, for longer, Mona.
They didn't even try with the continuity there. The Brooklyn gorilla in question is Sammy Petrillo, a hack comedian whose whole bit is doing impressions. And, brother, let me tell ya, getting through a movie with this guy in it is a Herculean effort.
Gee, I want a girl just like the girl.
Jerry Lewis, who this guy was known for imitating, was furious over this movie getting released, because Petrillo and Duke Mitchell were basically cribbing his whole comedy duo bit that he was doing with Dean Martin. The whole behind-the-scenes drama is more interesting than the movie itself.
Get out of here.
Petrillo also cameoed in a movie I've already reviewed, The Brain That Wouldn't Die. It's a very brief appearance, but it's nice to know he continued to not be funny.
The island of Cola.
Cola? Sounds like a commercial for some bubble water.
The film has Petrillo and fellow comic Duke Mitchell stranded in the jungle surrounded by a bunch of racist caricatures. Mitchell is less bad than Petrillo, but he has two excruciatingly long musical segments. They're brought to a scientist, Bela Lugosi, who seems nice at first, but a big red flag is that he's studying how to speed up and reverse evolution. So he experiments on Duke and reverts him into a guy in a gorilla suit.
I love you. Oh my, do I, baby. I give up.
Duke manages to convince Petrillo he's a gorilla, and hilarious shenanigans ensue.
Look, what are you trying to tell me? I don't understand a word. What am I, dumb or something?
This is unfortunately the kind of work Bela Lugosi received in the final years of his life. For what it's worth, he does a good job here. It's just that I shrivel up and die whenever Petrillo says anything out of his idiot hole.
You know, Morse code. And don't forget.
This chimp is funnier than Petrillo, and all it does is waddle around. This movie even has the gall to end on a fucking "it was all a dream" ending, because they didn't know how to end this turkey. What's the absolute just worst part of this is that we're denied Petrillo's death. The only vaguely amusing bit is the observational comedy about how Lugosi used to be Dracula.
He thinks you're the guy that goes around biting little kids on the neck, you know what I mean? It's him.
If there is a hell, this is in the lineup of movies that plays there 24/7.
Quiet. Quiet! Quiet!
After that last movie, I need a breather. So here's a short movie. What Did Jack Do is a film by director and notable crazy person David Lynch.
I love to eat cheese.
I've only seen a couple movies in his filmography, as well as the first season of Twin Peaks, but I love this guy.
What a heavy load Einstein must have had.
Fucking morons everywhere.
He's great.
It's such a sadness that you think you've seen a film on your fucking telephone.
David Lynch stars in this short too. He also edited, wrote, and directed it. It's about a detective interrogating a monkey for murder.
They say real love is a banana, sweet with a golden hue.
It's very David Lynch.
Well, there is no Santa Claus.
I won't be here for Christmas.
Yeah. What you're seeing is what it is.
I know why the chicken crossed the road.
Now, I've seen this short a couple times, and I do have an idea of what's going on, but in Lynch fashion, the conversation between the detective and Jack is disconnected to the degree of surrealism, which adds to the uncomfortable vibe of the whole thing. It's unsettling, but also very funny in a very weird way.
You get your hands up under those feathers and feel those full breaths. There's nothing like it in this world.
It's only 17 minutes long, so if you've got a Netflix account, well, it's right there. I like it, but I understand it's not going to be everyone's cup of tea.
Once upon a time.
So, Konga is a bad movie and all, but I feel the need to do a content warning for it. See, there's this scene towards the end of the movie that has sexual assault in it. I didn't want to start this segment off with a bummer, but if you plan to watch this movie, I feel like you should be aware of it. Anyways, here's Michael Goff shooting a cat. Konga follows a British botanist and scientist named Dr. Decker, played by veteran actor Michael Goff, a real asshole of a character who creeps on his students. A year after crashing into a jungle in Uganda...
Okay, there you go. I was gonna say, it sounded like the engine was failing.
Decker returns with a chimp named Konga. See, while he was stuck in Uganda, he discovers a fucking wild concept that there is a link between mammals and plants.
That little chimp will become the first link in modern evolution between plant and animal life.
And he's actually correct. He develops this theory into a serum that increases Konga's size and inexplicably turns him into a gorilla.
Remember every word I say.
Silly early 60s monster movie. Chimps and guys in gorilla suits are different species. He then uses hypnosis on Konga to make him obedient, and he sends this plant-gorilla-chimp hybrid after people who oppose him. Hey guys, do you want to hear the funniest gorilla joke of 1961?
I'm scared.
Eventually, this culminates in his assistant getting jealous of his feelings towards one of his students. Yeah, this is a really fucking creepy character. And she injects Konga with even more growth juice, which turns him into a giant monster.
Well, shit, I don't know, buddy. I'm out of here.
I was gonna say, he looks so unsure about this movie.
There really isn't an emotional anchor. Konga isn't portrayed sympathetically like King Kong, so all the weight is on Dr. Decker to carry the movie, and he's the exact opposite of sympathetic.
But at least you could have cut the flowers, send them away to a hospital. They could have brightened the lives of the sick.
Generous but stupid.
Because there isn't really a running through line or overarching narrative, we're just seeing Michael Goff act like a jerk to everyone he knows and occasionally sending Konga to murder people who oppose him. The film does everything in its power to show how much of an unlikable prick this dude is, and yeah, it works, but there are no layers to his character. He's not interesting to watch, he's just an asshole. You're not supposed to like this guy. That much is obvious, but the film doesn't punish him for his behavior in a satisfying way. This is where the content warning starts. If you don't feel comfortable with depictions of sexual assault, skip to this timestamp. I can't believe I have to do this for fucking Konga of all movies. Everyone he has wronged dies before him. It's not fair, especially for the female student he sexually assaults. He's handled clumsily as a character, and it just makes the movie needlessly mean-spirited. And yeah, it's incredibly tame compared to other movies, but I didn't want to see this in my giant monkey movie. The climax is just... it's a shit show. The The film makes no effort in hiding how fake the dolls representing the actors look. When Konga grows to giant size, all he does is awkwardly walk around in front of a green screen. He destroys a house, which is portrayed as a cute little miniature, and you know, the whole movie should have fucking had shit like that in it instead of a green screen. With the bad costume and poor keying, the climax for this movie looks like a Nostalgia Critic video, and those aren't supposed to look convincing. You know, with a movie like Gorgo proving that Britain had producers who cared about monster movies to some degree, I was expecting more from Konga. But really, the whole thing feels cynically produced. Like they didn't give a shit about what they were making and did the bare minimum on the special effect and plotting front. And that's not to say there isn't any sort of ironic charm to this movie. The last 20 minutes are quite funny. But I can't in good confidence say that the rest of the movie is worth watching, especially with that scene. But yeah, Konga is kind of a disappointment. I do not recommend it.
Oh, it's an unmarked van!
Yep.
Sus.
They can't shut the door!
He didn't shut the door!
They can't get it shut all the way!
Are they gonna leave it like that?
There it goes!
And there's just all the extras in there just not doing.
For whatever reason, some lunatic decided to make a sequel in 2021, and it's one of those bad on purpose kinds of movies you often see sharks in. I won't count this towards the number of monkey movies I'm talking about, but it is also extremely skippable.
What?
It's a blowjob. Get it?
What the fuck?
Let's switch things up with an official King Kong movie, featuring some good old tokusatsu action.
The robot is ready. Go get that ape.
Now this is how you do Suitmation. King Kong Escapes is the second and last King Kong film produced by Toho, the first being King Kong vs. Godzilla, and was a co-production with Rankin Bass, a company best known for their stop-motion Christmas shorts, and the animated Hobbit movie.
Whatever is the matter?
Also the animated version of Return of the King.
Where there's a whip, there's a way. Where there's a whip, we don't wanna go to war today.
That's gonna be stuck in your head now. This movie is a sort of tie-in with Rankin Bass's King Kong anime, though this film is largely disconnected outside of the villain of this movie sharing his name with the villain in the show. The villain's name?
Doctor Who.
Unrelated.
Yes. Kong's mine now.
Directed by Ishiro Honda, this kaiju adventure is about Doctor Who seeking to mine a rare material for a mysterious Madam X, who originates from an unknown country, and the film never clarifies where she's from, so ooh, spooky.
You're not Japanese. Chinese. Thai. Vietnam. Burma.
His stolen creation, a giant mechanical ape known as Mechanicong, isn't able to withstand the material's radiation, so he seeks out and captures the robot's biological counterpart, the real King Kong. Kong becomes infatuated with a woman named Susan, in typical Kong fashion. Akira Takarada is also here, playing the character named Jiro, rest in peace King, and is otherwise in a supporting role. He doesn't quite have the screen presence here. He's got a relationship with Susan, and oh hey, there's Hayata with a mustache. After getting captured and forced to dig for a material, about an hour and 9 minutes into the film, King Kong finally escapes.
The beast has escaped.
Doctor Who sends Mechanicong after the giant ape, and it all ends with a climactic battle in Tokyo. This film actually has the debut of fan-favorite kaiju Gorosaurus. A T-Rex that can kangaroo kick is pretty memorable, but he's not one of the zanier monsters in Toho's kaiju pantheon. The real star of this movie has to be Kong's robotic adversary, Mechanicong. There's something about his design that works. I like mecha, I like monk. It's a perfect marriage between the two. Funny how Kong got a robot duplicate before Godzilla. One of my favorite kaiju in Toho's lineup.
He's exactly like the original Kong.
Being a film made during the peak of the kaiju boom, it's more or less what you'd expect if you're familiar with Honda's work from that time, though this is decidedly cornier than, say, Invasion of the Astra Monster. Despite not being one-to-one with the show it's based on, it still has the aesthetics and plotting of a Saturday morning cartoon.
If you'll excuse the corny cliche, what's a nice girl like you doing in a place like this?
Even Kong's design reflects this cartoonier presentation with his bigger eyes and almost chibi-like proportions. Though, honestly, I think he looks awful. Eiji Tsuburaya's team could never get their primate characters to look great. His body proportions are strange and off-putting. I will say I prefer this to how he looks in King Kong vs. Godzilla, at least here he visibly emotes in close-ups. He looks like a scrungly, but he does emote. Susan, much like Anne in the original Kong, isn't the strongest character. When she's not screaming at Kong to put her down, she's slowly giving him directions like a stern mother.
No! No, Kong! Take me back! Take me back to the ship, Kong! 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 Help me! Kong!
It's annoying. Makes you wish Kong would just drop her. The pacing in some segments can be needlessly sluggish too. The part where Kong is forced to dig goes on for way too long.
Wake up! You shall not sleep!
It brings to mind the laser scene in Destroy All Monsters, where it feels like it just keeps going and going and going.
What's wrong? No use. The circuit's burning. Put the switch in again.
Even with its slower parts, King Kong Escapes still comes out entertaining with its special effects scenes. I love suitmation like this, even if some of the compositing effects look pretty rough. Like, wow, I think this movie has more extensive blue screen work than any other Toho movie of this time, but I could be wrong. King Kong Escapes, despite all of its issues, is a good time. It's the definition of corny. But it's a good kind of corny that's actually fun to watch, especially with the dub, which is largely functional but occasionally funny.
Ooh, yes.
Definitely not Ishiro Honda's best work. It's not even one of the better kaiju movies in this genre, but it's still great fun. Now here's a talking ape movie that doesn't feature this goddamn thing.
Smile.
Planet of the Apes is a 1968 science fiction film based on a French novel. To say this film is a pillar in pop culture would be an understatement. It's got a ton of sequels, it's been rebooted twice by now, and it even had its own TV show. The movie follows a group of American astronauts who return from a long space voyage, only to find themselves crash landing on a strange, undiscovered planet, where apes became the dominant species and humanity has reverted to wild animals. Taylor, played by Charlton Heston, manages to survive the capture and slowly convinces his ape captors that he can speak.
You know what they say, human see, human do.
And yeah, the final plot twist is so frequently parodied in pop culture that you're more likely to know what it is than not.
Oh shit. There goes the planet.
And I don't think knowing it ruins the movie, especially when the movie itself telegraphs it from light years away. But I will say this about it. With a screenplay co-written by Rod Serling, and with all the social commentary combined with the final twist,
some apes, it seems, are more equal than others.
Ridiculous.
It very much feels like an extended lost episode of The Twilight Zone. It's got that ironic premise you'd see in a lot of episodes of that show.
A planet where apes evolved from men?
In fact, there's a fun fan edit that turns it into a Twilight Zone episode, so check that out if you've never seen it.
3 men sharing the common urgency of all lost.
This movie builds up to a lot of great moments. It takes a long time for the reveal that the apes are the ones running the planet. The first half hour is spent on hiking. In any other movie, scenes like this would be a bit tedious, and I do feel as though it goes on for a little too long, but the details the crew discovers are intriguing. When the apes are first revealed, it's a big shock, and it's all because they waited to reveal them. I wish they saved the film's title card for the end of the movie, because imagine tuning into this on TV and not knowing where it's going. If you manage to tune in a little late and miss the title card, I'd bet it'd have the same effect. Another great moment the film spends a quarter of its runtime building towards is Taylor's voice returning. His throat is injured when he's captured, so he spends a chunk of the runtime taking abuse from his ape captors. He can't fight back. In effect, it's putting the viewer into his position, unable to properly convey his frustration. He does communicate through writing to Dr. Zira, a sympathetic chimpanzee scientist, but her interest in him is less in him as a person and more as a scientific marvel at first. We experience this upside-down world along with him.
He's moving his fingers.
Only because he saw you moving yours.
Which is why when his speech finally returns, it makes for one of the most memorably cathartic lines in cinematic history.
Take your stinking paws off me, you damn dirty ape!
Such a good scene. I could go on about the great reveals in later scenes, but I don't want to spoil too much. The ending is already infamous as is. So, how do the other elements hold up? The ape politics and phrases are amusing in how they parallel our own. They can be a little too on the nose, but I think it's charming.
I never met an ape I didn't like.
The film is slightly campy in execution. When Taylor finally starts speaking, he's in full ham mode, but every line is memorable.
It's a madhouse! A madhouse!
Not only that, but he's baring his teeth in like every scene, and it's really funny when you notice it. Regardless of the cheese, the film is still effectively bleak, especially knowing where the story of the series goes in its sequels. Almost no one gets out of this situation happy. The score from Jerry Goldsmith conveys this tone quite well. Planet of the Apes is a darn good movie. The characters are likable, the tone just works. The pacing could be a little better, but it's not too detracting from the film. The makeup is stellar for the time, and it's got a very fun script.
Remember, never trust anybody over 30.
It's one of the best unofficial feature-length Twilight Zone episodes. I recommend it. I might do a video about the other Planet of the Apes movies later. It's an interesting series. You've heard of Raymond Burr, yeah? He was a Canadian actor. If you're familiar with the Godzilla series, you'll know he played the character of Steve Martin in the 1956 Americanization of the original movie. He was the bad guy in Alfred Hitchcock's Rear Window. He played the character of Perry Mason on television.
Mr. Smith, fire in the court.
And one time he was a fucking gorilla. In Bride of the Gorilla, Raymond Burr plays a manager of a plantation who murders the father of a woman he has a fancy for. A witch happens to witness the murder, so as punishment she curses him and he occasionally turns into a gorilla. A murderous one at that.
I can smell 1,000 smells.
It's a pretty silly premise, but unfortunately it's one of those B-movies that has a cooler premise than its execution. Bride of the Gorilla is a relentlessly dull movie with very little action, largely constructed of scenes where characters discuss the goings-on. They don't do much in the way of excitement. Lon Chaney Jr. appears as a police chief in a rare appearance where he's not the monster of the movie. That's somewhat noteworthy. When Raymond Burr turns into the gorilla, sometimes we see his hands getting painted black. I hope this isn't the filmmakers trying to say something.
White people shouldn't live too long in the jungle. Brings out their bad side.
Yeah, benefit of the doubt. People are way too trigger happy in this movie. They keep firing their guns at the slightest sign of danger. Like, geez, be careful. Those things kill people, you know? This film is easy to rag on, but any B-movie with a camera that actually moves is actually a pretty rare thing and should be worth celebrating. Every 20 or so minutes between the boring dialogue scenes, some decent camera work will be on display. This moment, where the camera, acting as a POV, travels through the jungle to reveal that Raymond Burr has turned into a gorilla, is pretty well paced and actually kinda suspenseful. I feel it could have been better if it was a continuous shot and we saw the face move into frame as it holds on the water, but it's not too shabby as is. But yeah, this is another movie from the Mill Creek science fiction box set that I'm glad to get out of the way early. It's pretty bad. Now let's talk about a movie that literally no one has heard of, I hope. Rankin Bass teams up with the Ultraman company, Subaraya, for the Ivory Ape, a TV movie so obscure it doesn't even have a DVD or Blu-ray release. I could only find a copy of it with hard Dutch subtitles.
Right, you two, load the cage on the lorry.
The film follows the discovery of a rare albino gorilla in the Congo. The gorilla is taken by a greedy hunter, and it manages to break loose during the voyage. A zoologist, who these characters keep calling the Monkey Lady...
The Monkey Lady?
The Monkey Lady. The Monkey Lady.
Yeah, the Monkey Lady.
...tries to help track down the escaped ape. When the ape almost takes away a child, an old hunter is brought in to hunt it. The other hunters really want this thing dead.
I've agreed to allow these people to try and take the animal alive.
What? Alive? Oh, come on, let's get going.
That's pretty much the gist of it, but the film takes a long time to get going. It unfortunately doesn't have a strong enough cast to justify the pacing. They're all very typical archetypes. The zoologist lady is basically the environmentalist, animal rights type of character, and the hunter is remorseful for his actions in the past.
Isn't that odd? One would have thought that a male gorilla would be,
Actually, gorillas have the smallest penis-to-body ratio of any mammal. Don't ask how I know that.
No, none that you can see.
Also, it took me until now to realize that this was foreshadowing something later in the movie. That's actually kind of clever. The performances are generally decent. The scene where the hunter recounts a time where he accidentally shot a little boy is the standout moment.
That was the worst thing I ever heard.
Surprisingly, there isn't much of the ape itself. The film takes a less is more approach. But again, the characters here aren't compelling enough to justify its continued absence. The suit made for it is pretty decent. I think it's the first time Subaraya, the company or the founder, made a convincing ape suit. The face sculpt looks pretty good. See, this movie isn't particularly great in most areas, and I think that's what led to its obscurity. It's a very typical doomed primate story. The score goes a long way in conveying the emotion. I chose this movie for this list because I thought it would make for an interesting talking point, and now that you know about it, I guess I've done my job. But I thought there would be more to talk about than this. I'm sorry, but I just can't find much to talk about with this movie. It's just kind of a depressing film. Our final primate movie is a crazy King Kong knockoff from Hong Kong, the Mighty Peking Man. Unfortunately, I have to put up another content warning for this one because it has weird sexual content that can be off-putting. I won't show the worst parts, and I forgot how bad they could get before I chose this movie for review, but it's just something you should know. Case in point, here's how the plot summary starts.
One day I came home early.
A recently cucked man named Johnny agrees to go on an expedition to the Himalayas to find a giant primate known as the Peking Man. Most of his party either quits or dies during the adventure, leaving him the sole survivor. Johnny does eventually, and rather suddenly, encounter the Peking Man, and he inexplicably also meets a blonde woman with barely fitting clothing named Samantha.
You're a Papa and Mama.
No! Rain! Rain! Rain!
She has befriended the Peking Man in addition to the animals of the jungle, except snakes. After hanging out with Samantha for a while, he convinces her to bring the Peking Man to Hong Kong.
I'll find a large freighter, and in a week we'll put that stupid animal on show in Hong Kong.
You know the deal from here, though Peking Man has more tokusatsu-infused set pieces. I don't know what's more jarring, the random moments where the movie is slow, or the sudden tonal shifts. Just when it starts to lose me, it ropes me right back in. The editing is the movie's strangest curiosity. It works in some spots, giving the attack scenes some ferocity, but more often than not, it's just bad.
We broke up. Johnny, it's you I want.
Despite being a Hong Kong film, the special effects scenes were done by Japanese artists, resulting in some crazy good tokusatsu. It was largely directed by Koichi Kawakita, who would go on to do the suitmation in Godzilla's Versus era.
Oh no, they're getting pissed off!
Some aspects of presentation are rough. The close-up puppet of the Peking Man they use for reactions is hideous, and it doesn't at all match the full-body suit. Sometimes you can even see the suit actor's mouth, and I'm pretty sure this shot was supposed to have the Peking Man in it. But hot damn, are the Rampage scenes so well done. The miniatures here are outstanding. Set pieces like the one where he does battle with Hong Kong's military are thrilling. This is where the film's chaotic editing actually works. Keizo Murase, who sculpted a lot of kaiju suits for Toho's films, allegedly donned the Peking Man suit for the climactic moment where he falls off the building, so massive props to him for doing such a dangerous stunt. Now, I'm not a stickler for fan service in media. You know, I'm a 22-year-old straight guy. I enjoy looking at a good boob or two. But without getting too into my thoughts on that, this movie can be a bit suspect. Uncomfortable, even. The sexual content regarding the Tarzan lady comes off as leering. Like, yeah, when this guy starts creeping on her, it's treated as a bad thing. But is the film also not in the wrong for focusing on her like this? It's a little confused. Despite not being a pornographic or even softcore flick, the nipples occasionally slip out. You can even see the tape they used to prevent the bra from revealing anything in this shot. They should have called this the horny Peking Man. And yeah, the main bad guy tries to... Oh my god. This is where the content warning starts. The main bad guy tries to date rape Samantha, so that's fucking gross. There are ways of conveying how much of a prick this guy is without resorting to that. And yeah, like Konga, it's tame compared to depictions of rape in other movies, but I didn't want to see this in my giant monkey movie. The guy responsible dies pretty quickly, thank God, and it leads to an actually justified rampage scene where the Peking Man chases after them. Can't believe we'd have a repeat of Konga, but at least here the special effects scenes are so well done that they overshadow it to some degree, somewhat related to all the sexual stuff. But I can see why Quentin Tarantino likes this movie so much.
Anything to kill Peking Man. Anything to kill this Peking Man. Kill the Peking Man by any means you can. Kill the Peking Man by any means, that's an order.
The dub's audio quality is pretty bad. Not just in the voice acting itself, but in how poorly preserved it is. For full clarification, it's still pretty funny as far as English Hong Kong dubs go.
Hey, you want a big surprise?
Yeah, what?
Here she is. This is Samantha. She was raised in the jungle, you know.
So yeah, The Mighty Peking Man is a crazy mixed bag of a film. The sexual content is gross and leering, the editing and bizarre tonal shifts give it major whiplash, but the special effects scenes are great fun. And there are plenty of them towards the end of the film. It's kinda hard to recommend this one. It's an almost grindhouse type of appeal, you know, like an exploitation film. Kongsploitation, if you will. But if you can stomach some of the worst stuff, it can be an entertaining time. Weird and horny, but ultimately enjoyable. And with that, I've completed 15 Primate movies. Some of these I've seen before, some of these I saw for the first time. It was a long, hard battle, but it is far from over. There are many, many more monkey movies I have yet to review. Some of them even stranger than these ones. Stay tuned, I'll talk about more some other time. But until then, I sleep. Hey, thanks for watching. This was, another pretty big project. So I'm going to be taking a little break from video production for now. I'll try to get something out, but at the time of this recording, I'm a little burned out from these marathon videos. I've got plenty of ideas right now. In fact, I have one big idea for a Halloween video, but that's another couple months down the line. And with that, I would like to give a very special shout out to the $5 patrons who made this video possible. It's Godzi, Big O Dilo, An Actual Dimetrodon, Space Hunter M, CMG, Red Comet Harry, and Marpzilla. Thank you very much.